Okay, can you just please state your name and year of birth for the record, if you don't mind?
And my birth?
Year of birth.
Year of birth?
Yes.
How old I am?
Just for the record.
Is this a joke?
To
I'm playing. Linda Lucchesi, 1947.
And can you talk a little bit about, just to start off, can you talk a little about how you remember Simply Grand Music when it was first started and what it was like back then?
When it was first started, it was Sounds of Memphis. And my father and two other men, Paul Bomarito and Stan Kessler, started it. And I'm just finding out lately the way they built the studio was with the money from Wooly Bully. When it became a hit record, they built Sounds of Memphis, and that's how it all began.
So how did the publishing wing come about?
Publishing wing was Becky Publishing Company.
Okay.
And over at Sounds of Memphis, eventually it became my father's. Everybody wanted out of the music business kind of one by one. And he kind of got it, it became his. And different people like ran it, like Dan Greer. The Ovations were there. Barbara and the Browns, which was one of my favorites. And, oh gosh, so many. But Becky was the publishing company. And Sounds of Memphis also was a publishing company, along with El Gato. And they started two labels, which was XL and Penn. It all began in the late 50s. And in 1962, it was incorporated. Then Mike Kerr, who y'all are familiar with, and what year was that, Brandon? That 1971. I think 71. They did a joint venture. It was MGM and Sounds of Memphis. And Mike Kerr wasn't but 19 years old. And I remember meeting him because I was probably, if he was 19, I might have been 15. And he was president of MGM Records, if you can imagine. This guy, and he was a musician. That's how he got started. Well, when they formed the joint venture, that's when the Ovations, George Jackson, Lewis Williams, all these people became involved. Dan Greer. And when you start a company like that, you have the company, but you also have your publishing companies too. So Becky's the one that's known for most of the publishing. And then in 1982, when I bought, my father sold the studio. So I came in and bought the publishing company and all the master tapes, recordings, and under Simply Grand Music. And then the other two, I kept Becky Publishing because the name is so well known in the music community outside of Memphis. And so then I came with, started another publishing company called Memphis Town Music. And that was for all the ASCAP writers. Simply Grand and Becky are BMI companies. And recently we started a wing that will host CSAC writers. And something else I was going to tell you about. Oh, we started a label too, a Simply Grand Music record label. I've done a lot with my labels I bought from my father, Excel and Penn, because that's where all the older, I feel like I have two catalogs, the older one and what I call the newer one. The newer one has a lot of country music, still some soul music, and pop, all kinds, rock, heavy rock music. Whereas the older catalogs, mostly Memphis R&B and soul. And it's a great catalog. I would say that the older catalog is right up there next to Stax in terms of the music. In fact, most all the people that recorded at Stax recorded at Sounds of Memphis too. I can't think of one that did.
Where was the studio?
On Rayner Street, which is off Lamar.
Do you have any memories of being at the studio?
I do, from the 1980s. We took a lot of pictures too. I have memories when I was a child of going to Sam Phillips' place a lot. And I've been told that my father's first studio was near Sam Phillips on that street. I want to say it's Marshall, but I'm not.
That's right.
Is that it?
That's right.
That it was in one of the warehouses there. Now, when this lady told me that, I thought, that sounds familiar, but you know, I was so young. But I grew up in this business. He was always bringing Bobby Wood records home. Bobby Wood just got a note on Bill Street, and he's in Nashville now, and played piano on Garth Brooks and all the huge country stars. And a songwriter. Wrote a lot of songs for Garth as well.
Can you talk about, and you mentioned, so in the, so it's the publishing company that sort of leads to the studio, I guess, is that correct?
Right.
In the early 70s, you talk about this partnership with MGM. Do you know how that partnership worked? You know, where were things recorded? Where, you know, what was housed where?
Because I have all the old contracts too. And I would be happy to send Molly a sample, you know, a couple of pages of the old contract.
That'd be great.
Where she could see my father and Mike Earp's signatures. And she could put it on the site.
That'd be wonderful.
Because I have all of those. And what it was is their mutual friend, Eddie Ray, who's still living, he's a friend of mine today. He gave Mike his first break. And he introduced Dad and Mike. And Mike liked what Dad was doing. Dad liked how Mike was such a young entrepreneur. And they decided to form this joint venture because Mike loved George Jackson. He wrote Old Time Rock and Roll. And he just loved that guy. And Eddie told me the other one he liked a whole lot was the Ovations, Louis Williams, because he sounded so much like Sam Cooke. And that's how they started. And they had, you know, you and I have had numerous conversations, and they had so many more artists than what we've talked about. I can send her a list of those, if that would be helpful to you.
That'd be wonderful.
Because some of them became quite successful. Needless to say, Wooly Bully and Sam and Sham and Little Red Riding Hood were by far the biggest. But the Ovations did quite well too.